Yes! Hello, my beautiful friends. It is an amazing day. Let's wait for those internet tubes to connect themselves all across the fruited plain before we get into the business on the day, because we have an emergency stream today. An emergency stay is being requested by several states out there, more than several, more like 25 of them, which is a lot. So we'll talk about it. Looks like the tubes have connected themselves. Hello, my friends, and welcome back. Very glad to have you here. We are 7 days away from the election. We'll be back here on election night, going all night. Actually, I don't think it's going to be that late since we're going to have a victory, but we're not going to get too complacent. We're going to be out there pounding the streets, sitting here, urging everybody to get out there and vote, unless you're planning on voting on election day. Either way, we're jazzed about the votes getting out and getting in. Before we jump into the business on the day in detail, let's do a little bit of a preview on what's coming up so I can show you around. You can see this is the big story. The emergency filing at the Supreme Court. It is their application for a stay going to the Honorable Chief Justice John Roberts. And it's not just our friends in Virginia. It's a bunch of other states. And so two things that we're going to go through here today, and this will be the meat and potatoes that we'll enjoy today, is this submission to the Supreme Court, as well as this amicus brief, which has been submitted by Kansas and 25 other states. So we're looking at 26 states total is the number. And so a bunch of states are jumping in because they don't want non-citizens, illegals, to vote. And so all these attorneys general are all here. You may see your state on here. We'll jump into this in further detail. But if you've been with us here on our channel for some time, we're having a little bit of flashback to post-2020 litigation, when, remember, we had a bunch of states submit, and Ted Cruz even offered to argue that after the election, that urgent appeal to the Supreme Court, and they rejected it. It was the same thing, like 20-something states all jumping in. And we've got a certificate of compliance. Oh, man, don't you hate that? A certificate of compliance going into the Supreme Court. Oh, it's not funny. So I'm not laughing at you, Abhishek. I'm not. I'm laughing with you, hopefully. It's just a little typo there. We all got fat fingers. I get it. But all right, so this was the amicus brief submitted by 26 total states going into the Supreme Court. We'll break it down. We'll talk about exactly what's going on and see what's inside, because this is a big one, right? This was the DOJ coming and suing Virginia. There were non-citizens who admitted they're non-citizens, who were confirmed to be non-citizens. This was a law in place for ages, and the DOJ still came in, sued, and so now we're trying to settle this because the Court of Appeals has said those non-citizens are coming back on the rolls. They're getting ballots, their votes are counting, and now, of course, we'll see what the Supreme Court has to say about that. So that's coming up. Then we're going to turn our attention to two states. I've got an update for us in Pennsylvania, and this one is just outstanding. So remember, we've talked about there was this directive. Now, this came from the secretary. We have to be careful with these secretaries out there who are causing shenanigans in our elections. And same thing is happening here. And we've talked about this lawsuit before because when the lawsuit was filed, we read through the complaint. But the problem here is that there was a directive, right? There was a manual change. There are the rules that are passed by the legislature, the statutes, and then there are the manuals, right? Actually, the rules that are interpreting the statutes that are imposed so that they actually can carry out the election. But here is what this one said. It said that registrations may not be rejected based on a non-match between their ID numbers. So if you send a ballot in from overseas, there's a form there. Put your driver's license number or your social so that when you get it, you can say that that foreign ID matches who we think it is. This directive says if those numbers don't match, you cannot reject it. Okay, so if they don't match, meaning it's not valid, you cannot reject it, right? That was the manual. That was the rule change. And then a federal judge from Pennsylvania came out and said, exactly, all of those people can continue to vote. You don't check anything because it's too close to an election. And you should have brought this up a long time ago. And so we'll read what he says. But now we're in a situation, right? Think about this in various parts around the country. In California, it's illegal to ask for ID. And I've seen in videos other people saying, hey, let me show you my ID. And them saying, no, I can't accept that. Then we have other locations like Pennsylvania where they're actually sending in ballots from overseas and they're not even checking them, right? Or maybe they are checking them, but if they fail the check, doesn't matter. They get to vote anyways. So what good is a check if there's no consequence of the check? There isn't a check at all. We also have this letter, which came in Pennsylvania. A lot of weird stuff happening in Pennsylvania right now. People getting kicked out of lines, waiting in lines, interesting reports percolating. But we'll pay attention here to this, which was a letter from a bunch of state officials, state senators, state representatives in Pennsylvania who sent this letter over to the Board of Commissioners saying, hey, we got problems with this election already, and we want some answers on it. So we'll see what they're upset about and what's happening in Pennsylvania from the representatives there in Pennsylvania who are obviously hearing from their constituents and making their voices heard. And then lastly, we want to jump over to what's happening in Arizona. Short update on this one. But yesterday, there was a proceeding that took place where they brought in Adrian Fontes, which is not that guy. It's this guy. No, that's not him. This guy right here. Adrian Fontes, who is responsible for our elections and making sure that our voter rolls are valid. Well, we know that there are a couple 100,000 people on the list that may have some problems, like maybe not our citizens. Could be a big problem, meaning they shouldn't be on the list and shouldn't be voting, shouldn't be getting ballots at all. Well, he was in court because there was a Freedom of Information Act request, essentially, that was filed. And he was asked, do we have IDs for these people? And we'll see what he says. It's quite perfect for our election officials in Arizona. So we'll see what that said. And then in Arizona, we also had today, this just finished about an hour ago, which was an election update from our county officials. And I have a short clip from Bill Onesie Twosie Gates over here, who's telling us what's going on in Arizona. So we've got some updates. Their next update will be back on Monday. And so we'll see what's happening in Arizona. So we got a lot of election shenanigans afoot. And then you're not going to believe who's hanging out with Jocelyn Benson, free and fair election secretary of Michigan, who's going to make sure that this election is not biased or rigged at all. It's Hillary. Oh, gosh. She's back. And she's hanging out with Jocelyn Benson now. It's like, yeah, I guess walking around and interfering with election secretaries in real time. So that's happening. And we've got a bunch of good stuff coming up. And then, of course, we'll stick around and hear from you, which is the most important part of all of this. See what you have to say about this and more at the end of the stream. Now, before we get into any of this business on the day, you know what we got to talk about. Getting prepared, my friends, because the world often feels like it is on edge a little bit. We've got tensions, an upcoming election, economic instability, supply chain problems, threats popping up all over the place. And now they're talking about a new pandemic, and you've heard the stories. The medical industrial complex is not there to help us. And so we got to take action and be prepared. And so that's why we've got to tell you about the Wellness Company and their Contagion Emergency Kit. It's a lifesaver put together by real experts like Dr. Peter McCullough. And inside it, you're going to find medications like ivermectin, hydroxychloroquine, budesonide, nebulizers, all sorts of good stuff, critical to treat respiratory illnesses and much more, especially as we're heading into the flu season. And so can you imagine when you or a loved one needs some of these life-saving medications and you don't know where to find it? You don't have to go to someone and be told no. There's no gatekeeper. Just a few clicks, the kit is delivered right to your door. It's peace of mind for you and your family in uncertain times. And so I've got my kit. You can get yours. Go to twc.health/Robert. Use code Robert. You'll save $30 off and you'll get free shipping. And so get ready, get your kit. Use the link in the description below and use code Robert to save with our friends at the Wellness Company. And so, all right, my friends, now, without any further ado, we've got an emergency stay that we've got to attend to. And so let's get into it right now. An emergency stay is what many states are asking at the Supreme Court, knocking on their door saying, can you please step in and do something about this? There will be over 1,000 non-citizens, people who should not be on the voting rolls, in Virginia. We know that the law has been in place for a long time, saying that they should be precluded from voting, and the government is fighting to keep them on. In fact, the Biden-Harris administration is fighting to keep them on. And so this is now submitted here from our friends in Virginia, the Office of the Attorney General in Virginia, but they're not flying solo. They've got 26 other states who are joining them in this. And so we're going to poke through both of these filings at the Supreme Court, waiting for Judge Roberts to give us some clarity on what comes next. And so the 25 states you can see are here. We've got Alabama, Alaska, Arkansas, Florida, Idaho, Georgia, Indiana, Iowa, Louisiana, Kentucky, Mississippi, Missouri, Montana, Nebraska, North Dakota, New Hampshire, Ohio, Oklahoma, South Carolina, South Dakota, Tennessee, Texas. We got Utah, West Virginia, and Wyoming, who threw Liz Cheney out on her booty by about 40 points. Bye, Liz. And of course, we have our certificate of compliance, which might be French. I don't know. But here, as we can see, we're going to go through what's happening. It's a bunch of states. So 26 listed, and Virginia is also on that list. So we've got a nice majority of the states. Simple majority. Well, you can see we've got the emergency stay, which has now been filed. And we know who the parties are. We've talked about this case. This is coming up out of Virginia, the DOJ suing Virginia and trying to keep non-citizens on the ballots. And here's what they say. To the Supreme Court of these United States on the eve of the election, they say, all right, listen, SCOTUS, this is a pretty serious situation here. Less than 2 weeks before the 2024 presidential election and more than a month into early voting, the district court below ordered Virginia and our officials, they ordered us to place over 1,600 self-identified non-citizens back onto the voter rolls. Okay, people who've told us they're non-citizens. They say, yeah, put them back. Put them back on. In violation of both Virginia law and, in case you're wondering, common sense. About 600 of these individuals personally told the DMV they're not citizens, and about 1,000 presented non-citizen residency documents to the DMV, who were then positively identified as non-citizens through the government's own SAVE database. We looked it up with your computers. The United States itself has explained that SAVE is accurate 99% of the time, right? That's from their Government Accountability Office. Oh, yeah, 99%. Oh, God. So what do you think that means? Like, if they say it works 99% of the time, what do you think it is? In terms of like actual accuracy. You just had to guess. 13% probably would be my take. 13%, 99%. Yeah. Just like your masks, right? And the jab and all the other things. Okay. In 14 days. Now, the district court based the injunction, but I actually love this because the state is now relying on their own fake numbers. They're like, the U.S. Government Accountability Office. They're like, no, it's accurate. 99% of the time. Like, well, you said it works. They know it doesn't. But the district court based the injunction, which mandates a variety of disruptive measures, meaning that they're shoving them back on the rolls. The district court said, put them back. They said they're making us do this, and they're mandating a whole bunch of new problems. Like, it's going to be very disruptive to force non-citizens back onto the ballot on a provision that doesn't even apply. And even if it did apply to the removal of non-citizens, Virginia's program complied with it anyway. So you're trying to use some weird law to force us to put these people back on. They're not supposed to be on there. This election eve injunction is based on legal error, Supreme Court, and the injunction, which prohibits the application of a law that's been on the books since the Justice Department said it was fine in 2006, will injure Virginia's sovereignty. confuse her voters, overload her election machinery and administrators, and likely lead to non-citizens to think that they are permitted to vote, which is a criminal offense that will cancel the franchise of eligible voters. So the DOJ approved this a long time ago. These people confirmed they're not citizens. They're using some law that does not even apply to the removal of non-citizens to put them back on. They're trying to shove a round peg into a square hole. Saying the law, we took them off because we cannot do that. We have to, sorry. This mandatory injunction, this enforcement, this requirement, violates this court's Purcell doctrine. And we know the Purcell principle has been coming up a lot lately, and this is the idea that federal courts shouldn't take action against state laws when there is a pending election. Like, don't interfere with the election when we're close to the election. It's the Purcell principle. This court has repeatedly instructed that Purcell bars federal courts from enjoining state election laws when an election is coming up. All these cases say you did it there, and 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 there, and there, and there, and there, neener. And so this principle recognizes the critical interests that state officials have in protecting their election and avoiding voter confusion. Why are you trying to shove these people back on the polls right now? You can't do that. The Fourth Circuit refused to apply Purcell and declined to stay the injunction, holding that appellees do not challenge a state election law, and that Purcell is inapplicable here to the federal law. So saying you're applying the federal law, I'm not imposing upon your state law. Now that ruling is also incorrect and also violates this court's precedent. The district court enjoined the enforcement of Virginia law. They weren't impacting on federal law, right? Purcell would apply the federal courts not interfering in the states. So the federal court, in order to get around that, just said, I'm not interfering with the states. I'm only interfering with the feds. And they say, well, no, you're not, because you're clearly stopping us from complying with our state code. It's our sovereignty to make sure our elections are legitimate. And Purcell applies to 11th hour injunctions under the federal laws, particularly where, as here, they order mandatory retrospective relief of adding numerous people to a state roll past the deadline for doing so and shoving them on right before an election, for crying out loud. And so applicants thus move, Supreme Court, will you please hear us and listen to us, please? We're knocking on your door. For an emergency stay of this order to put them back on. Because the district court ordered us to comply with the injunction, we respectfully request that the court issue a stay by Tuesday, which is today, and that the court issue an immediate administrative stay to permit the orderly resolution of this motion. This relief is not available anywhere else because the Fourth Circuit has denied the requested stay. Meaning, we've asked the lower courts to stop. They issued an order, put them back on the rolls. They said, can you please stay that order while we appeal to the Supreme Court? They said, no, they're going back on the rolls. So they said, okay, now can you, Supreme Court, then order them to stay it so the voters don't go back on the rolls so that we can resolve this? The district court issued an order enjoining enforcement, so stopping us from removing the voters. The district court orally denied the motion to stop the injunction pending appeal. And so we filed this emergency saying, help us right now. Okay, the election's like right around the corner. Are these votes going to count or not? And let's be clear about this. This is 1,600 votes that are at issue here, but this is a small microcosm of a much broader issue, which are votes and voters who should not be on the rolls, who are on the rolls, who are not citizens. These are people who've self-identified, right? There's a much broader bucket of this. It's not like, oh, there's only 1,600 people. It's these people have self-identified and they've confirmed it, verified it against SAVE. It's like they've done their due diligence on it. 1,600 are now off. But in other states, in other areas and locations, in Arizona, for example, we have a bucket of 210,000 plus, which we'll talk about in another segment, who are unknown. Our county recorder says, well, I don't think we do have their IDs, so we have no idea. So it's 1,600 here, 16,000 elsewhere, and 160,000 plus in places like Arizona. Don't have any idea who these people are. This is just a small subset of people who've self-identified, raised their hands and said, yes, I should not be on the list. Applicants filed with the Supreme Court, and that's where we're at now. They say, all right, listen, 9 Supreme Court judges. This should be pretty obvious to you, even you, Sotomayor. Based on its finding that the right of citizens in the United States to vote is a fundamental right, Congress passed the NVRA, the National Voter Registration Act. What does this do? The law says, quote, eligible citizens should be voting. To promote eligible citizens and their participation in voting, they require each state to establish procedures to register to vote by application made with an application with their driver's license. The procedures say each state, so Congress is mandating to the states, each state shall, mandatory, ensure that any eligible applicant is registered to vote in an election. Eligible. If the valid voter registration form of the applicant is submitted to the state MVD, then they're registered. But again, they've got to be eligible and added to the list of eligible voters. Who is eligible? Citizens. Now, at the same time, they also required states to allow eligible applicants to register. It imposed restrictions on removing these, quote, registrants from the rolls. Under the NVRA, a person who is an eligible applicant and has submitted a valid registration may not be removed from the official list except in 4 circumstances. Here's a couple. Voter request, death, felony conviction, mental incapacity, change in voter residence. In addition to those, there's a blanket ban, but there are the exceptions. The NVRA also contains a special prohibition on certain removals close to federal elections. There's a quiet period provision as well. It incorporates other things. So to ensure that the Commonwealth in Virginia and that their rolls remain clean, they're giving us the rules, while also complying with the federal rules, here's what Virginia did. We're trying to fit it into all these statutes. So we amended our election code all the way back in 2006 to require the DMV to send the information of any individual who declares himself to be a non-citizen on a DMV form to the Virginia Board of Elections. Then they check that person's information against a system to ensure that these self-declared non-citizens are not mistakenly included on the voter rolls. Only if there is a match does elect forward the information to local registrars to continue the verification process. Now, the policy is to send local registrars only the records of persons who affirmatively and contemporaneously declare they are not citizens on a form. It did, however, also recently work with the DMV in an ad hoc review of records to ensure that persons who engaged in transactions and who had documents on file showing non-citizen status were not improperly on the voter rolls. So they do it as they come through, right? As they're processing somebody, they check. But they also just went and just kind of did a check. So from July 1 to June 30th, 1 year basically of reviews to accurately ensure that any such individuals who had subsequently become naturalized citizens, right? They file paperwork saying, I'm not a citizen. Then they become a citizen. They check. Oh, are you a citizen now? Okay, well, we're not going to remove you automatically, so we check. So the DMV ran these individuals through the Homeland Security SAVE database, which, as we've seen in other lawsuits, is mostly garbage. I think Ohio said we can need access to more. You can't even search by name or date of birth in the SAVE database. You have to use like an immigration number, which they're probably getting because these people are adding it when they're going to the DMV. The SAVE database shows whether a legal alien resident has subsequently obtained citizenship, right? So somebody they already have on record, they've got a number, they look them up. Only those persons registered to vote who had non-citizen documents on file with the DMV and who also were confirmed as current non-citizens were then transmitted to local registrars to act upon. Then the transmission of the information occurred in late August. The individualized approach, meaning they're checking every single person, which confirmed non-citizen status with a SAVE search within the previous 30 days, ensured that no naturalized citizens would be removed. Okay, so one thing you want to be concerned about is that it's not overbroad. You don't want to get a bunch of actual citizens who should be allowed to vote thrown off the rolls. So they're being very clear. And they found 1,600, which means the number is probably much bigger than that, at least 10 times, maybe 100 times bigger than that, especially in places like Arizona, where we have a bucket of 200,000 that we admit are questionable. When elect finds that a person who has declared himself to be a non-citizen on a form or has failed a recent save search, they send the person's information for review. The law requires registrars to delete the name of any voter who is known, Virginia law, this is mandatory, it's in the law. Delete the name of any voter who is known not to be a citizen by reason of self-declaration or from elect or save. And so they manually review each match on an individual basis to confirm the non-citizen and the registered voter identified are the same person. And they have the discretion in this process to correct errors, such as that the person identified in the DMV file are not the same individual, happens a lot, or that the registrar has superior information on a person's status. If they determine that the non-citizen and the registered voter are the same person, then they'll mail the person a notice of intent to cancel their registration. Wow. Then they say, hey, we've got information that you're not a citizen, and please affirm within 14 days that you are a citizen, so they get a warning. If the recipient fails to return the affirmation within 14 days, he sent another notice saying, you're going to be removed. Hello, give us a call. By default, Virginia also provides a grace period and does not actually cancel registrations until 21 days later, until they're like, I'd never go to the post office. I mean, who does that? Who always, Anyways, even if the person fails to respond to either of these notices, he can still re-register with no impediments. Even after their ordinary registration process closes on October 15th, he can use in-person same-day registration to apply and vote if he is in fact a citizen. So it's like 2 warnings plus a grace period, and you can register on the same day if in fact you are a citizen and there was a mistake. Now, the Youngkin order was issued August 7th. It did not create these long-standing processes, okay? Youngkin didn't make this up. The order simply required the DMV and the elect databases to share their data on a daily basis instead of monthly, and to certify that they're following the law already. You just say, just follow the rules. That's all. And this stuff was all created ages ago and already pre-approved by the DOJ, the same DOJ that's suing them now. So the plaintiff in these consolidated cases, the people who sued, are the United States useless government and an assortment of advocacy organizations, okay, which are lefty liberal groups who want non-citizens on the rolls, asked the district court to inject itself, asked the federal government to come into Virginia and mess with their elections. Within 1 month of the election, weeks after early voting had already begun, and they asked the court to order Virginia, our federal government, ordering a state, to restore voter registrations of canceled registrants, non-citizens, who you saw. It's not like this was an accident, okay? They identified 1,600 people. They scrutinized the heck out of them. Check here, check there. Are you sure? Does he have a citizenship card over there? No, I checked under there. What about over there? No, I checked over there. What about over there? That too. He's not a citizen. Send him a notice. Send him another notice. Then keep him on. And the government says they're coming back. The court first concluded that Purcell actually supported adding them back. They said you can't remove them because it's too soon. They said that the quiet period applies to non-citizens because the NVRA contains no explicit exception for them, and that Virginia was systematic. So they said, no, you can't. Sorry, you should have removed them earlier. At the same time, the district court held that non-citizens could be removed under the general removal provision, despite that provision not containing an explicit exception for them either. And so balancing the equities here, Supreme Court, the district court relied on hearsay and a smattering of anecdotal evidence to conclude that Virginia's program would cause irreparable harm and was against the public interest because that evidence showed that only that the self-identified non-citizens it ordered Virginia to put back on failed to return a form and attest that they were citizens. That's all they did. We're not going to remove them because they didn't send a letter back to you in the mail. That's not why they were removed, because they didn't respond to a form. They didn't say, are you a citizen? It's like a Valentine's note, like will you go to the prom with me? Yes or no, or to the dance with me? Yes or circle one. Yes, no. They didn't send that to them. Are you a citizen? Yes or no? No. Oh, great, you're not. I'm going to pull you off the rolls. No. It was multiple redundancy checks to validate the decision. And the judge is like, well, they're not going to return a form. Thus, on October 25th, only 10 days before the election, the district court, a federal judge acting on behalf of the Harris-Biden administration, ordered Virginia to within 5 days restore 1,600 self-declared, confirmed by federal government databases, confirmed non-citizens back on the rolls. It's crazy. And that dilutes, right? They're going to get ballots, and we'll see if one of them votes. I'm sure somebody will vote. Odds are good since they're registered to vote and they're getting ballots. And in fact, the other judge, I think, ordered that they are told that they are still registered and that they can vote, I think was the clarity of the order, but we'd have to read that again to get the specific language on that. But the district court was like, yeah, put them back on and send them an apology letter, basically. And you better pay for their Uber to the polls, because the judge was mad. Now, initiate a mass mailing, right? Here it is. Here it is. Initiate a mass mailing notifying them that they'd been put back, promulgate guidance for local registrars, issue public statements retracting the mailed cancellations, educate poll workers about the order, track the poll workers' training on this order, and then they denied the stay of all of these requirements. So you're going to go unring this bell rapidly. So then we moved later that day for a stay from the Fourth Circuit. We said, we're going to appeal this. This is crazy. You're going to wait. You're going to make us put non-citizens back on the rolls so that and then tell them that they can vote, essentially. The cancellation is canceled. The Fourth Circuit denied. They said, sorry, the Purcell principle is inapplicable because it's federal law. The NVRA, the federal law, talks about the quiet period, and it would necessarily mean that the general removal provision prohibits the removal of non-citizens. That's too close to the election, and so rejected. So the removal is canceled. The people are coming back on the rolls, according to the Fourth Circuit, which is why we are now here at the Supreme Court. So they say, look, all right, Supreme Court, listen. This is obviously nuts. We are here. We're asking for a stay because we think one will be granted. If there's a reasonable probability that 4 judges will consider this issue meritorious, then we can move forward. If there's a fair prospect that the majority of the court will reverse, and if there's a likelihood of irreparable harm that will result if you deny the stay. So if you make them or allow them to put these 1,600 people back on the rolls and get ballots and have their votes counted, there will be irreparable harm. So the question for us, are there 4 judges? Remember, there are 6 conservative judges with squishy John Roberts, who we never really know what he's going to do. But will 4 judges think this? Will they think that they'll be able to convince another judge to join them in order to reverse this? And do they think there will be a high likelihood of harm? I actually think that there's a good chance of that. Amy Coney Barrett gives me pause. But this court has applied more searching review of election eve injunctions. It has stayed injunctions against state election officials issued close to elections before. You've done this before, so don't act like this is too soon. Here are some reasons for this stay. The district court entered a burdensome mandatory injunction. They're forcing us to go put these people back on the rolls and to educate them and to buy them snacks on the car ride to the polls. On the eve of an election. We haven't even gone to Costco yet. Now, the injunction is based on misinterpretation of the NVRA, which does not prohibit Georgia from removing people. And they're not going to suffer any injury here. If we remove these people, the government's not going to be harmed. Virginia's process removed non-citizens. They're not eligible to vote, so no one's going to be harmed. To the extent that any individuals misidentified themselves as non-citizens, if they're like, oops, I actually am a citizen, I made a mistake on that one. and then failed to attest to their citizenship upon the registrar's request, any individual can still just go vote on election day. Just show up there and vote. I'm a citizen. Oh, great. Sorry about that. Here you go. Virginia's law has been around forever, and both plaintiffs, the DOJ and the liberal groups, unduly delayed bringing this lawsuit. Virginia's law creating this removal process has been in place since 2006, you punks, and plaintiff waited until 60 days into the 90-day quiet period, less than a month before the election, before bringing the suit. And by the way, this is a repeat issue, okay? Both sides are calling this out. So Republicans are getting hammered by this too. Judges come out and say, well, I don't know why you're trying to remove people from the rolls. I don't know why you're challenging UOCAVA. I don't know why you're challenging hand count and all these things, or passing these rules. You passed them too late. So both sides are invoking this. But the DOJ bringing a lawsuit against a policy that they endorsed back in 2006 is lunacy. It's clearly election interference. They're doing it because they're freaked about Virginia. Less than a month before the election, bringing this suit. The mandatory injunction will also impose significant costs, confusion, hardship upon Virginia, creating an influx of work for its registrars and other people critical before the election. It's going to also confuse non-citizens into believing that they are actually eligible to vote. They are. They're going to get ballots and their vote will count if it is submitted. So they are eligible to vote according to the current order. Finally, if this, which is insane because they're not citizens and they've confirmed that. Finally, if this court considers the likelihood that it would grant review and reverse the lower ruling, it's likely to do so. Court of Appeals have disagreed as to the proper interpretation of these provisions, and the court below erred on this question. And so the court should therefore accept this case, grant a stay, and stop this from going into fruition. They talk about the Purcell principle, which is this idea that the federal courts will not interfere, and it applies right now. And therefore, the DOJ, Biden-Harris, they can't satisfy it here. They cannot show that the merits are entirely clear-cut in their favor. In fact, to the contrary, the merits decisively favor Virginia. Several federal judges have concluded this in this case, and this case, and this case. Here, says Congress did not intend to bar the removal of names from the official list of persons who were ineligible and improperly registered to vote in the first place. It's, you don't make changes that are going to impact the people who are participating in the election, but it's not applying to people who are not supposed to be participating in the election. It doesn't apply to the removal of non-citizens, okay? The quiet provision says that it doesn't apply to them. Their registrations were void from the beginning, void ab initio. From the inception, their registration when filled out is invalid. So it doesn't apply to them. Virginia's removal of non-citizens, therefore, did not violate the law. When we interpret a statute, the court is brought in to interpret the ordinary meaning of the phrase. Section 8 talks about eligible applicants. An eligible applicant becomes a registrant through proper mechanisms. And so the removal restrictions are stricter in the 90 days, when at that point, it prohibits systematic as compared to individualized removal programs. And they didn't do a systematic removal in Virginia at all. The NVRA doesn't prohibit the removal of persons like non-citizens and minors. They were never eligible to begin with, so they could never become a registrant who is subject to the law. The law protects registrants. They are not eligible registrants. This understanding of the text is confirmed by its structure, and that's clearly what it means. Saying this error alone is sufficiently important for this court to grant the stay. Not only would such a restriction on the state's removal power be facially absurd, right, by saying you cannot remove non-eligible people, that's absurd. It would also render the provisions unconstitutional. The court has made clear that states can regulate their elections, and who empowers Congress to regulate how federal elections are held but not who may vote in them. They're forcing states to keep non-citizens on their voter rolls. And it's a serious constitutional question that the Supreme Court needs to address. And the District Court and the DOJ, although not the Fourth Circuit, agreed that non-citizens can be removed under the general removal provision, presumably because they're not registrants, and going back to the quiet period. But the plain text of the statute confirms this. They go to the dictionary. Eligible and ineligible. We divide them into subsets. Who's a voter, who's not a voter? It's like, well, I know we have to get into this stuff because it's so complicated for them to understand the concept of a citizen, apparently. The statutory purpose of the NVRA does not protect non-citizens. Just look to the findings and purpose section 2. So stop protecting non-citizens from being removed from an election that they're not supposed to be in the first place. Ignoring the implications of this reflects a serious error in reasoning in that case. And so that doesn't apply here. And this is the juicy stuff for Supreme Court judges. They're like, getting into the nitty gritty. But we still have to see what the 25 states say about this too. So Virginia's non-citizen removal process is not systematic, as we saw earlier, which was prohibited. It was individualized. They checked they checked the Facebook and everything, man. They're like, what are these people doing? Even if the quiet provision period were read to apply to non-citizens, even if you said it does, we didn't violate it. It bars removal of people done systematically. But that's not what we did. We did it in an individualized manner. We actually took people who declared themselves to be non-citizens. There is another step of this too, because the local registrar then did a manual review, person by person, to confirm the two people are the same. Then they contact each non-citizen by mail. They give them 14 days. They give a pre-printed form affirming citizenship. Very easy. It's very reasonable. Person, they say a reasonable person, another court has said, with an interest in voting is not likely to ignore this type of letter. Very simple. It's already just mail back the pre-addressed card. All you got to do, just sign it. So they send a notice of cancellation a second time. It's the very definition of an individualized process. It begins with a personal attestation of non-citizenship. They say, I am not a citizen. So we're not even searching them out. They raise their hands, and ends in the removal of a person only when they get two individualized letters to them offering an individualized corrective response. And the ad hoc process was similar, if not even more individualized. The process was limited to individuals who had provided a legal alien residency document to the DMV. So if they got legal alien residency, they're not a citizen. Then they searched. Then they used their unique alien registration number to verify their status. To ensure the people who had recently obtained citizenship were not removed, they then did a fresh search of SAVE. The Fourth Circuit then put great weight on the fact that they used electronic comparisons. They said, well, they use computers, and so they used a computer system on their computer, and so therefore systematic. Well, do you have a folder on your hard drive called system? Yeah, there you go. You used the system then. So illegals back on the rolls. But the use of electronic tools, actually, I don't think any of these people are illegal because they're all non-citizens. They all actually raise their hands. They've got official numbers. They've all got legal residency. So they're just non-citizens. But the use of the electronic tools, they said, was systematic because they used a mouse and a keyboard. The Fourth Circuit and their additional reasoning for why the non-citizen removal is systematic is even less persuasive. It said the challenged program does not require communication or particularized investigation into any specific individual. What? But a letter is a communication, obviously, and registrars sent two of them to each specific individual, to them, uniquely to them. So that is based on their alien identification number, which of course is particularized. So we need a stay. If we do not have a stay, if they force us to bring these 1,600 non-citizens back, Virginia will be irreparably harmed. And if you grant a stay and these people are kept off, the government will not be harmed at all. Nobody will be harmed. Not only will the Commonwealth be irreparably harmed absent a stay, so will its voters and the public at large. The injunction requires Virginia to put 1,600 self-identified non-citizens back on the rolls. The Fourth Circuit concluded that it could not know that the people removed were in fact non-citizens. But they failed to consider everything we did. Over 1,000 of the removed self-identified non-citizens were confirmed as non-citizens by fresh save searches that uses the federal government's database. Others voluntarily declared themselves to be non-citizens. The vast majority of the 1,600 that Virginia is required to place on the voter rolls are in fact non-citizens who cannot vote without committing a felony under U.S. code. But they don't care. The district court minimized these concerns by wholly ignoring all of this. They said this court does not know that all the persons who were removed were non-citizens. But in the preliminary stage, doubt counsels for caution. Non-citizen voting drives honest citizens out of the process because your votes matter less. What does it matter? I mean, if anybody from anywhere can vote in our elections and they just send in a ballot from overseas that aren't matched against any number, or they're actual non-citizens who raise their hands and you let them vote anyways, what's the point? Do we even have a country? Citizens' right of suffrage can be denied by debasement or dilution of the weight of our vote. It should be every person gets one vote, not our votes count for 0.08, 0.8, 0.9, because a bunch of other people have stolen a portion of them. Once this dilution occurs, there can be no remedy for legitimate voters. There's no do-over. There's no redress. The election occurs. And then the Democrats prosecute everybody who challenged them after their thievery. Plaintiffs contend, the government, the DOJ, that they're going to suffer irreparable harm. Well, because there could be some non-citizens who are removed. Not so. Even if a citizen was removed because he mistakenly checked the wrong box at the DMV and somehow missed both notices, he can still vote on the same day and cast a provisional ballot. 98% of provisional ballots are counted, and a person's prior removal from the rolls provides no basis to reject a provisional ballot. So as long as they attest to his citizenship in the same day registration, they're good. And that's a remedy here for them. So they're not going to be disenfranchised. They just have to show up and vote. And of those three, let me back up. Indeed, organizational plaintiffs, so the DOJ and others, they've identified only 3 named person as citizens who were removed from the rolls. Okay, so they went through those 1,600 names and they said, oh, see, you do have some citizens on there, don't you? And they found 3. And of those 3, 1 has already voted. 1 has re-registered to vote, and 1 plans to same day re-register and vote in person on election day. And they've got their declarations. So they went, they talked to Carolina. What's up, Carolina? DD, what's up? Oh, these are the exhibits. Anna J. Norman, and these are 2 people. Plaintiff's scanty evidence is far from demonstrating either that Virginia's process was unreliable or that any voter would be irreparably harmed. Okay, they've all figured it out. And also, the DOJ has unduly delayed bringing this complaint. Virginia's statutory non-citizen removal process was enacted and pre-cleared by the same DOJ in 2006. And they've been removing people since at least 2010. Yet even after Governor Youngkin issued this new order, the government, the DOJ, Biden-Harris, they waited to sue until October 7th, 2 months into the 3-month quiet period. The district court ignored their failure because they claimed that they didn't have enough information to sue because Virginia stonewalled them. Oh, gosh, yeah. Is that's a good valid reason to sue someone? Okay. But that gives our side all the ammunition in the world because that's what the Biden administration does constantly. But the claim they have asserted under the NVRA accrued at the beginning of the quiet period. And so they've waited too long. The United States' only excuse for its tardiness is that the voting rights section of the DOJ was unaware of these removals until October. Oh, we just learned about it. They were too busy prosecuting Trump. Given that the media was widely reporting on this controversy, they should have known. If they even had a modicum of diligence. Well, they are government prosecutors. The Fourth Circuit also adopted their argument, saying that Purcell doesn't apply here because they were using the wrong law. But that argument cannot excuse their decision to wait. The decision to wait has serious and deleterious consequences for Virginia. By the time that the preliminary injunction hearing in this case took place, early voting had already been happening. None of this would have happened if they would have sued in August. Now, at most, the Supreme Court here should consider the nature of this 90-day quiet period and balance that against Purcell. And they caused a delay. They tell us running statewide elections is very complicated. Burdens increase as election days draw nearer, requiring us to put 1,600 self-identified non-citizens back on the rolls is going to cause some complexities. Not only does the injunction force the registrars, so the requirement to put them back on, force them to re-roll literal non-citizens after the deadline, it also requires elect to take a bunch of burdensome actions. They ordered individuals to send letters to all of these people, rescinding the removal notices and issue guidance to registrars. Attempting to send notices and give last-minute guidance will create confusion and make things even more difficult. There is no way to guarantee that the 133 registrars will uniformly implement these rules. There's a lot of potential for confusion. There's going to be a massive influx of work for them. Every minute on this is going to hamstring our election. And finally, the court ordered that we send remedial mailings, apology letters, informing people that they have been improperly removed from the voter rolls and that they're being restored to the rolls. That carries a serious risk of confusing non-citizens into thinking they can vote. That's the point, right? It is true that the mailing will state that non-citizens are not eligible to vote, but the plaintiff's entire legal theory is that people accidentally end up being removed from the rolls because they didn't read prior communications. The injunction also requires the Commonwealth to issue a press release stating that it was not allowed to remove them from the ballot. Super confusing, okay? You get a letter from the state you're removed because you're a non-citizen. Then you get a letter that says, wait a minute, you shouldn't have been removed. You're back on the voter rolls. You're going to get a ballot, but don't vote because it's a felony. And then these people are like, I don't know, what? Is someone going to vote? It would not be surprising if some non-citizens understood these statements as an authorization for them to vote. They got a ballot in their hand. And are they going to prosecute them for a felony? No. Not only would such a mistake potentially expose them to criminal charges, which is the real risk, it's almost like they're entrapping them, inducing them. Such court-introduced errors would severely undercut the public's faith in our electoral system. 1,600 potential felonies. All you got to do is send that ballot back in. Oh, you're a felon. The point of Purcell is not to do this. And so they say the court is likely going to grant review because this is a mess. The lower courts are divided on this very important issue of election laws and how this should work. The court has routinely granted cert on these cases. Not only has the scope of the removal provision divided these lower courts, but it's an important issue. The rules surrounding these elections should be stable and knowable for voters. The current confusion around the NVRA makes the rules anything but clear by design, right? That's how they get all these people voting who should not be voting. States are unaware of when or whether they can even remove non-citizens from the rolls. You can't, otherwise the DOJ will come after you. They need to know with certainty whether they can remove non-citizens at any point, or only outside of the quiet period, or never. When is it? And so for these reasons, we ask from the Office of the Attorney General in Virginia that you accept our case, Supreme Court, and stop them from ordering us to put these people back on the rolls. Allow a stay to permit the resolution of this case, and don't make us put them back on the rolls. And so they're joined by 26 states, Kansas, and then some. You can see led by the state of Kansas here on the top line, and we'll see what they said in a short amicus brief. Friends of the court joining Virginia. They say, look, this is ridiculous, okay? 3 weeks before an election, the DOJ filed a lawsuit saying that Virginia violated federal law by removing people from the rolls. They sued and filed their suits more than 60 days after the violation and weeks after voting had already begun. But the district court nevertheless agreed with the DOJ, injecting mass confusion into Virginia. And us states are concerned about this, saying the court should grant Virginia's emergency motion, Supreme Court, and restore the status quo, saying the court has been clear. The Elections Clause empowers Congress to regulate how federal elections are held, but not who may vote in them, and that it would raise serious constitutional doubts if a federal statute stopped a state from obtaining the information necessary to enforce its voter qualifications. But that's exactly what's happening here. The district court, a federal judge, is forcing Virginia to add people back on the voter rolls despite being removed because they're non-citizens. This sweeping interpretation converts a statute into a federal regulation, and it raises serious questions about the constitutionality of all of this. This court should accept Virginia's narrower and correct reading of the provision and interpret it so that they can remove people who shouldn't be on the rolls from the rolls. We got a bunch of states here who are joining in on this. And I'm sad to say that our useless attorney general in Arizona is not doing anything. Thanks for nothing. Saying the states agree with the arguments advanced by Virginia, all 26 of them. April 20th, Congress passed the NVRA, 1993, so eligible citizens could vote. 90-day period, as understood at the time. It does not protect non-citizens. And so we know the main points of this. 18 years ago, the people of Virginia, through their elected officials, created a lot of the same rules that we talked about in the states' filings. Let's see how the states are concerned here. They say the historical record shows the framers intentionally chose to use the term manner of holding elections in the Constitution in order to deny Congress the power to establish the qualifications of voters. James Madison specifically stated that the right of suffrage is very justly regarded as a fundamental article of Republican government, and that to leave it open for the occasional regulation of Congress would have been improper. He also noted that to have reduced the different qualifications in the different states to one uniform rule would probably have been as dissatisfactory to some of the states as it would have been difficult to the convention. In other words, except for certain constitutional requirements that are not relevant here, the qualifications of voters are left up to the states, not to Congress. And we were talking about this on our Locals Membos stream. Maybe it was an after party yesterday, but a question came up. Wouldn't it kind of be nice if we just had one set of rules for our elections that everybody just followed and it would just be easy? Because here every day on the show, we're like, new lawsuit, new lawsuit. Virginia does this. Pennsylvania's doing that. North Carolina over here. Georgia's no hand count. It's like crazy, like bedlam, right? But then we have the problem of what happens if we have a centralized, corrupt federal government that then mandates things that sway the elections at a national scale. That's really what we're concerned about, because we want a union of the states and decentralized power so that the federal government can't dictate how things go all over the place all the time. That's more like the federal government is running all of the elections. We want the states to run the elections and then vote as the state with their electors in the federal election. So it's more decentralized, and I think better because it doesn't enable total control. But they're trying to essentially do that with these federal laws to compel the states to meet certain thresholds. And obviously they're being exploited all over the place. Virginia can't even manage its own voter rolls because federal laws, they say, federal judges say, are precluding them from doing that. This court has already recognized that Congress can dictate the how, but not the who. And so a federal statute determines what we can do. The interpretation of the so-called quiet period urged by the respondents necessarily results in Congress forcing a state to allow voting by non-citizens over the objection of the state. Talk about your overpowering federal government. It converts the NVRA federal statutes into a federal mandate now that states allow non-citizens to vote in violation of state law and in violation of federal law itself whenever a putative voter's non-citizenship status is discovered within 90 days of the election. So as long as you can squeeze them in there within the 90 days, they're going to be on the rolls. If that is really what this law requires, the statute's totally unconstitutional. Congress lacks the authority to require non-citizen voting. This court recognized in another case that setting voter qualifications would be meaningless if states didn't have the ability to enforce those requirements. But if the government were correct, it would mean that Virginia has no power to enforce its prohibition on non-citizen voting whenever they discover non-citizens on the voter rolls. Any assertion that they are not seeking to prevent Virginia from enforcing its voter laws is undercut by their own arguments. They said that the quiet period does govern removals, including over non-citizens. But essentially what this does, it means that the mailing and the injunction leaves Virginia with no way to enforce its own laws. You're stripping the sovereignty away from the states, which is what the federal government likes to do. It mandates non-citizen voting. Very easy. All you have to do to reverse that, just interpret the narrow the narrow interpretation is what should apply, rather. The NVRA is built on 3 congressional findings, and so we'll fast forward through those, but Congress is saying it's for citizens. Interpreting the NVRA to mandate that states retain non-citizens is inconsistent with the rest of federal law. No one else is mandating this, and so this court should reject this interpretation. The upcoming election is hotly contested, has caused division around the country. Perhaps the division would be lower if the federal government were not interfering with the election via last-minute attacks on state efforts to police voter qualifications. The U.S. government, Biden and Harris's DOJ, sued Virginia on the eve of the election, weeks after early voting already began, despite knowing about the Commonwealth's supposed NVRA violation for at least 60 days before. This court, the Supreme Court, should reject the effort to change the rules in the middle of the game and restore the status quo. The framers understood the problems associated with federal control over a state voter qualification law. Problems on full display here. The Constitution leaves decisions about voter qualifications to the people of Virginia, and the people of Virginia have decided that non-citizens are not permitted to vote. And so this court should reject the government's attempt to keep them on the rolls in Virginia, grant the application by Virginia, and issue a stay, stopping the lower court from forcing them to put these people back on the rolls. And it is a wild time that we're living in. It's almost like dividing by zero in many ways. You have to put them back on the rolls because they're valid registrants, but they're not capable of voting. And they can't register to vote unless they're capable of voting. So they got taken off. Now they got to get put back on. They're going to get ballots if they want them, I guess. If they're part of the mail-in system, they can go show up and get one. But if they vote on it and submit it, felony. Now, the issue in and of itself is a problem, right? The idea that we've got 1,600 people that have self-identified and they were registered and they're going to be on the ballot, on the rolls, is in and of itself a problem. The fact that the DOJ is also filing a lawsuit to try to reverse all of this on the eve of an election is a whole separate problem, and it shows just how weaponized the DOJ has become, that they would launch a full-on assault to put bona fide non-citizens back on the roll. And reading through this, I didn't realize how extensive and how particularized and individualized each entry was. Apparently, every single person they vetted, clearly a non-citizen, but they're going to be put back on the rolls anyways. That is the Biden-Harris administration at work. Non-citizen votes matter more than citizen votes. They fight harder for them than they fight for citizens all throughout our country. And they'll keep doing that. All right, so let's turn our attention over to what's happening in Pennsylvania, because we've also got shenanigans afoot over here. A federal judge in Pennsylvania is now saying that there is no requirement to check overseas ballots when they come in to match their number, to vet their social security number or their driver's license number, to check it. Doesn't even matter. If it doesn't match, that is not a justification for rejecting the ballot. That's not enough. So the numbers, in other words, don't matter at all. What are we talking about? We're in Pennsylvania, Middle District. We've talked about the lawsuit that was filed some time ago. This is an order from the federal courts, and it revolves around this directive change. You can see Pennsylvania Department of State published this some time ago, and they said, pursuant to our new orders, this is what we're going to be doing. The directive is now issued by the Department of State, the Secretary of State, to clarify and specify legal processes related to matching driver's license numbers and social security numbers for new voter registration applications. The directive underscores in bold, this is the rule, so if you're working in Pennsylvania government, this is what you're supposed to do now. The directive underscores that Pennsylvania and federal law are clear. That's their interpretation, so that's a big no, we don't know. That's not how we read it. They say voter registrations may not be rejected based solely on a non-match between the applicant's identifying numbers on their application and the comparison database numbers. So, you send in a registration form. You say, my name is Robert Govea. My driver's license number is so-and-so and so whatever. Send that into them. They put it in. They look at it. Numbers don't match. Oh, I can't know. This is not, so I should reject that. No, count it. They say all applications for new voter registration requires only the following: and a valid driver's license number, the last 4 digits of a social, or a statement indicating that they don't have either. Okay, so you either need the numbers or you don't. And that that voter registration compare the information. That's all. Compare. They say the comparison process was intended as an administrative safeguard for storing and managing the official list of registered voters. This requirement that you compare, it doesn't mean you're restricted at all. It doesn't mean check at all. It just means look at it. I guess just need to look at it. Oh yeah, they are different. Oh, cool. Totally fraudulent. Yeah, I compared them. Totally fraudulent. Perfect. Send that in. Counties must ensure their procedures comply with state and federal law, which means that if there are no independent grounds to reject a voter registration application other than a non-match, the application may not be rejected and must be processed like all other applications. It's important to remember that any application that's in pending status while a county is doing follow-up with an application of a number that could not be matched, you can see it right here. Let me move my fat head out of the way. Must be accepted unless the county has identified another reason to decline the application. So if the numbers don't match and you're following up, you must accept it. This is the rule that came out from Pennsylvania to all of their people. This is their directive. This is how you're going to process stuff when it comes in. Leaving an application in pending status due to a non-match is effectively the same as declining the application. So don't leave it pending. It's not pending. It's accepted. So accept the applicant as described. You cannot put it in pending. They must come in. So now we understand how it's working. So here is the order. The memo from the judge out of Pennsylvania federal court says the following. All right, now he's going to do this delay thing. You know, on September 30th, 36 days before the general election, Republican members of Pennsylvania's Congress, so these are state officials in Pennsylvania, sued Pennsylvania saying this is ridiculous. They're saying that they're not even checking numbers. saying that there is no legal compliance with verification of voter registration applicants' identity and eligibility. They just register you, they don't even check. And they're now granting the government's motion to dismiss, saying, yeah, it's fine, they're allowed to do that. So they're saying, we know all about the rules, UOCAVA, HAVA, and UMOVA. We've talked about these before, but there are all these different rules that interplay with one another. And so let's get into the meat past the rules. Here is what the challenge is about. The local congresspeople were suing, saying that Pennsylvania law requires them to actually check IDs. They say that the Pennsylvania Department of State has issued a directive, the guidance that we just looked at. And his testimony saying that no, they're exempt from verification. He said during a hearing, the guy running this said they do not have to provide a driver's license number or ID, and they don't have to provide the last four of social. Says UOCAVA voters, these are the out-of-state voters who are not in the United States, they are exempted. Okay, so if you're out of state, you can register without an ID number, and you'll get a ballot, and you'll be registered, so your ballot will count. Just to be ultra clear about what's happening. This guy says, Deputy Secretary, they are exempted, so they don't have to provide ID. That's an exemption in federal law and state law. So there is no verification. Just sign up, get a ballot, and you can vote. Clear as day. He said it himself. Now, they believe that this practice creates an opportunity for the inclusion of ineligible ballots that might render the votes inaccurate because UOCAVA applicants, the judge says, could theoretically register to vote, receive absentee ballots, including by email, which they get, and cast ballots without providing ID at any step in the process. In the worst case scenario, which is all true, in the worst case scenario, they submit that these lapses might leave federal elections vulnerable to foreign interference by falsified registrations, which might affect a close congressional election. And in this, they raise a single count, which they say is preemption. They're saying, oh, well, the question is, well, okay, so what do you guys want? Like, if all of that's happening, like, what do you want? Well, they want a declaration saying that their directive, that policy that we just read, violates the law. Stop the secretary from funding or facilitating this. They actually have to check, and they actually have to reject stuff. Require that they check their ID. And so they filed a motion for a restraining order. Stop this. You're not allowed to accept these ballots. By that date, by the time they already filed this, Pennsylvania had already transmitted 25,000 UOCAVA ballots to their intended recipients ahead of November 5th. See, that's a lot of ballots, man. At the time, as time was of the essence, we established an expedited schedule for motions practice. We permitted the DNC to come flying in here. We permitted the Pennsylvania Democratic Party to jump in. Bunch of people filed amicus briefs, and now they move to dismiss this case. So we'll fast forward through the rules and the different requirements to bring civil claims, and we'll see what this judge is going to do with this. So first, latches and Purcell. We've talked about the Purcell principle, the idea that federal courts should not intervene in state elections in the final weeks and months before an election. And latches, of course, is the idea that if you delay bringing a case and you shouldn't have delayed, then it's your problem. You can't bring it late. And Purcell. So you can see latches and Purcell all happening here. He said, well, why didn't you guys bring this sooner? We asked why you haven't. The department issued its guidance 12 days later, and the individual plaintiffs provide no good excuse for waiting until barely a month before the election to bring this suit. When asked about this at oral arguments, why'd you guys wait so long? The state already made this change 2 years ago. They said, well, we just learned about the Iranians. Yeah, the Iranians might be sending in UOCAVA ballots or something. And we learned that there was an unsealed indictment against the Iranians back in September that raised concerns. And we thought, oh man, maybe the Iranians are going to take advantage of this. The indictment states in that, the indictment, okay. The indictment was talking about other matters, and you can't rely on phantom fears of foreign malfeasance to explain your delay in bringing this claim. So don't use the Iranians as an excuse. You guys should have brought this in place on your own. The disputed guidance, in which the department unambiguously declared its official position, it says overseas voters are exempt from the ID, was publicly available long before September 27th. The fact that fact alone defeats the plaintiff's alternative suggestion that their delay was due to the failure to give public notice. And so you just waited too long. Now, the relief you desire is also a non-starter. You want an order directing the county boards to segregate the ballots for potential exclusion 3 weeks into this litigation? And interveners who represent Democrats overseas would also be threatened. Many people would have to expend vital resources, and it's just way too late in the game. Plaintiff's remedy would hamstring election administrators less than 2 weeks out. And that's why we have Latches and Purcell. And so we will grant the motion to dismiss on that basis. Latches. Extreme prejudice would result if you were allowed to wait so late into the game and then bring your claim. They also talk about standing. They say these congressional plaintiffs don't even have standing. As for the organizational plaintiff, the group does not identify a single member who has even been injured. Vote dilution is wholly speculative and inadequate as well. And so the foregoing tenets apply with equal force here. We cannot stop the secretary from doing anything that's going to affect the overseas ballots. More than 25,000 of those have already gone out. The secretary has no authority to direct the counties to segregate those ballots. And so your prayer for relief is not going to happen. They must now live with that decision. You guys waited too long to sue. And for these reasons, they're going to grant the motion to dismiss. And those votes are going to come in. They don't even have to check the numbers. And there's 25,000 of them that have gone out already. So signed in conclusion by Christopher Connor, saying plaintiffs delayed too long to file their action. They lack standing. They failed to join the indispensable parties. They failed to articulate a viable cause of action. And so they're going to grant the secretary's motion to dismiss. They're going to deny as moot the motion for a temporary restraining order and an injunction. And that is how Pennsylvania will go, meaning people who registered to vote and who did not have IDs matching social security numbers were all valid, allowed to come through for several years, and they'll get ballots and they'll vote. And 25,000 of them have gone out. And the Democrats, as you can see, came skidding in here to make sure that this does not get disturbed at all. So overseas people who may or may not have resided in Pennsylvania can register to vote, get ballots, and will vote. And that's happening right now. So we'll see what ultimately happens and if there is an appeal of this up to the Second Circuit Court from the Congress people, but the clock is ticking. The election, of course, is even closer now. We'll keep our eye on it and see what happens next. Meanwhile, we've also got some other Pennsylvania Congress people who are upset about what's happening in Pennsylvania. You see a bunch of these people, these folks who are local Congress people, Brian Fitzpatrick, Frank Ferry, and others in Pennsylvania sent this letter in to the Board of Commissioners saying, we've got some election problems in Pennsylvania happening now. Saying, hey, commissioners, you know, the right to vote in our representative democracy is one of the most sacred rights. It's the responsibility of our election officials to make sure things work. One can argue there's no greater threat than voter disenfranchisement. And as elected officials, we are deeply troubled by recent reports and widespread constituent concerns over the past 24 hours involving Bucks County voters who are looking to cast their ballots this past Saturday. According to news reports, more than 60 people were standing in line. More were arriving at noon on Saturday when county officials came out and said they were cutting off the line at about 40 people, and some people won't make it inside. Our office has fielded complaints from constituents, which include voters attempting to enter the Board of Elections line prior to the 2 p.m. deadline, and voters claiming that county officials are impeding them from exercising their right to vote. Many constituents now fear they will not have the opportunity to vote this year. While there is no question that on-demand, in-person mail-in voting is a courtesy provided by and carried out by our government, this incident has sent shockwaves throughout our community and is causing individuals to lose faith in our system. This potential disenfranchisement of voters must be rectified so that every eligible voter is able to vote. As you're aware, last week, the Pennsylvania Secretary of State Al Schmidt sent an email about the absentee deadlines. In his email, he said 5 p.m. was the deadline to request absentee ballots. He asked every county official to review their plans, and he said they should go on to consider other changes. Now, while we understand the process of this, mail-in ballots are not specifically outlined in the law. And as elected officials, we ask that the recommendations from Schmidt receive full and fair consideration and provide us with this information. There's no denying we're in the midst of a truly historic election cycle. We're going to have one of the highest voter turnouts in American history. We're a few days away from the election. So thanks for taking the time to look into making these changes. Please listen to this person and follow his recommendations so that these people are not disenfranchised. Signed by a bunch of people in Pennsylvania. So interesting. Now, we had something sort of similar happen in 2022 with Kerry Lake here in Arizona. People showed up to go vote and they couldn't go vote. We saw how that election went. And now we're stuck with Katie Hobbs. So we're going to keep our close eye on stuff like this and other election interference as it unfolds. Thanks for subscribing as we do. All right. And so, my friends, we got one final quick update out of Arizona. And this one is in Arizona, which is, of course, my backyard. And so let's get into this story because this is about our elections here. And this fella, Adrian Fontes, is the subject of this story. Adrian Fontes, the Maricopa County Secretary of State, is now admitting that they don't have a good idea on the identity for about 200,000 plus people who may or may not be voting in this upcoming election. Kind of concerning. There was a hearing. Of course, we've talked about this litigation. A lawsuit was filed against the secretary and against the government of Arizona, demanding access to information about who comprises that bucket of 200,000 voters. Are they citizens, non-citizens? Who are they? Where did they come from? How'd they get on the list? And what are we doing about it? And so the secretary has been dragging his feet, not wanting to give that information up. And there was a court proceeding that took place. And here is what it sounded like here in Arizona.
Secretary of State demanding the names of thousands of voters who failed to provide citizenship for 2 decades be made public.
Both sides presented their case before Maricopa County Superior Court Judge Scott Blaney today. And Fox 10's Ashley Rodriguez is live to explain what happened. Ashley.
Yeah, if you thought this voter registration error was resolved, we are far from that. Now, conservative nonprofit groups are getting involved, and they are not buying that these 220,000 voters are all U.S. citizens, and they want proof. The only problem is the Arizona Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, he doesn't have it. Tension inside a Maricopa County court Monday where Arizona Secretary of State Adrian Fontes was grilled by conservative group Strong Communities Foundation of Arizona.
But you don't know whether you have the 218,000 identities or not. Is that correct?
I'm pretty sure we don't.
Former Trump advisor Stephen Miller.
I'm pretty sure we don't. That's our Secretary of State. Do you have the ballots for the IDs for 18,000 people who may or may not be voting soon? Pretty sure we don't. Is this a joke?
Miller is behind the group suing Arizona County recorders, claiming the government officials are not doing their jobs and hurting the credibility of the state's election integrity. This comes after a September discovery. The Motor Vehicles Division made an error, impacting around 220,000 voters who had never shown proof of U.S. citizenship, but had been allowed to vote for 2 decades.
2 decades. Remember in 2022 when they told us it was the safest and secure election ever and Kerry Lake's nuts? Remember in 2020 when they told us the same thing? No widespread evidence of voter fraud. There's definitely no illegals voting on our election. Everything is perfect. It is the most functional and exquisitely performed, if I do say so myself, election we've ever seen. You could eat off that election off the floor. It was that good. And suddenly we just discover 200,000 people. The margin of error in Arizona in 2020 was 11,000 votes. And there's 200,000 people that are questionable on here. Is this a joke?
It was 345,000-ish. It went down to 148,000-ish. Then we got a number that was around 98,000. And then suddenly a new list, wholly and completely separate, of 349,000-ish popped up. Once that started getting worked a little bit, we ended up with this more or less 218,000. But none of those numbers can be depended on.
The conservative
Oh, that's great. None of the numbers can be depended on. Those are pretty big numbers, man. Pretty big numbers. And we've got an election. 7 days.
Profit wants to make sure non-citizens are removed from the voter rolls just days out from the election by getting the names and sending them to the county recorders for verification. They say their intention is not to post them publicly. But Fontes told the court not only does he not know how many people are affected, he doesn't know who they are. The MVD has that information. And even if he did, he doesn't have the resources to figure it out.
These folks are in the middle of an election right now. This is the
We know, man. We know. That's why we're so upset about it. We know.
Single most busy time that any of these people will see in any 24-month cycle. Early vote.
So that means they can't figure out who is legitimate or not. So there are theoretically hundreds of thousands of ballots who are just floating around to people who should not have them.
Voting is underway in the most robust manner possible. It would be virtually impossible for us to be able to do what the plaintiffs are asking us to do. A, because we don't have control. B, we don't have a list. C, we don't have the resources. And D, I'm scared to death for my voters.
The defense argues in this political climate, the release...
Your non-citizen voters? You're scared to death for what voters? The voters you have no IDs for? The ish voters, the 100,000-ish, or the 300,000-ish voters? You pretty sure about that, or what?
Release of the names and addresses of these voters could inspire voter registration vigilantes.
That's where I was. So I was just there yesterday, and that's where we did a walk and talk. So your boy I walked in that door right there. And if you're on our locals, you saw our walk and talk around this area, downtown ASU campus. And that's the door I walked in. Very simple. Walk in, show the ballots, drop them off, called it a day.
Voter registration vigilantes who could harass, intimidate, or resort to violence against them, believing they are undocumented immigrants.
This list will likely be presented on the internet in social media as determinative of the outcome in Arizona, simply because 2020, only about 11,000 votes determined that outcome. Here we have actually, over 200,000 on the list. And so this will be a case where this class of individuals will be marked, accused of determining the outcome. And whether President Trump, former President Trump wins or loses, this creates a substantial risk of danger for the people on this list.
It creates a danger for everybody, okay? If Trump wins, when he wins, you think Kamala's people are going to come out here and, be satisfied with this? No, they're not going to be satisfied. And to be honest, they shouldn't be satisfied. None of us should be satisfied that there's 200,000 people on a voter roll that have no IDs. It's lunacy. And then for them to lecture us that all these elections are incredible, it's all free and fair. We're going to have Bill Onesie Twosie Gates coming up here in a minute. You'll see what he has to say.
Now, remember, under the law, if you don't show proof of citizenship, you can still vote the federal ballot, just not state and local ballots. We did reach out to the MV.
Yeah, and so to be crystal clear about that. So you just go, you sign a form. I'm registered to vote. Put whatever name you want on there. Doesn't matter. In many places, don't even need ID. Doesn't matter. Don't need proof of citizenship. Doesn't matter. You just swear this. Okay, I don't have ID. And you fill out the federal form. Then they mail you a ballot. Then you vote illegally. Then they're going to prosecute you for fraud, I guess. for felony charges, even though you're also in the country illegally, and there's no repercussions for that? Are they going to investigate you first of all? Are they going to even track the name? Did you give them the right name in order to get that ballot, or did you just need a mail-in address somewhere? I think we know. So, yep, you can still get a federal ballot, vote for president all you want, just can't vote in Arizona.
D for comment. They did not respond in time for this report. And the Arizona judge there, he says that Arizona law favors disclosure. So it's on the Secretary of State to prove why he should not have to release the names. Now, we are expecting a decision from the judge in the coming days, but really this is a scary situation for those voters. And this lawsuit demonstrates just how tense this political cycle really is, especially in Arizona, as we are a swing state.
Yeah, it's not good for those voters if they're on that in that bucket. Like, no, I really should be in here, or maybe I shouldn't be in here. And it just undermines the credibility of everything. So it's basically a disaster. So great job, guys. And this is Bill Onesie Twosie Gates. We've heard from him many other election cycles, including in 2022. And I think 2022, he's like, what's your problem? Relax. Okay, if it takes us 10 days to figure out how to rig this thing, it's fine. Leave us alone. And he came out today, and I think this might be the part where he was talking about people on social media.
Important election. There's a lot of interest in it. We anticipate Scott Jarrett has put together a plan that assumes very significant number of people voting both early and on election day. So it's not like this is a surprise that this is a big election. We all understand that.
Okay.
Because of the two-page ballot, as I was talking about earlier, we anticipate that it will take people a little bit longer than it obviously would with the one-page ballot. On average, we have 79 contests, and some of those contests are the propositions that were put on there mainly by the legislature that are pretty long to get through them all. So that's why we're telling people to make a plan. Make a plan in advance. Take the time to do your homework. Review the individual propositions and all of the contests. But I'm going to push back a little bit on the term you used, crippling lines. Okay, we all wait in lines all the time. We wait in line to buy a coffee. We wait in line to go to the movies. You know, we wait in line for all these different things.
Not for hours.
We have waited in lines for elections for as long as we've had a republic. Okay. And I felt like to some extent, as the guy who was standing up in these press conferences in 2022, that there were some candidates who believed that their voters have a right to not have a line. That's not realistic.
The machines weren't working there, dude. And you came out and you said, oh, I just got some onesie and twosie little things to fix in the machines. Well, I'll just put those in the box. It's all no problem at all. I'll figure it out. We're not happy with that. And what was very convenient with this is that many of those delays and the machine problems that happened during Kari Lake's election, they happen in very red districts, okay? We went through the spreadsheets here on this channel, looking at the delays in all of the red counties. And it's weird. All of the long delays were impacting Republican strongholds. Very convenient. Then Kari Lake loses, so-called. And they had their mission totally accomplished. Here he is again. Just wait in lines a little bit. Get your votes in, my friends. If you're in Arizona, get your votes in. Please, please, please get them in, because this guy is up to no good.
Okay. We have put a great plan in place to try and keep those lines as short as possible, but people need to make a plan. And we have given people the tools so that they can avoid those, to the extent that there are long lines, that they can avoid them. And I appreciate the partnership of the media in getting this information out there. Go to locations.maricopa.vote. It lists all of the vote centers that are currently open, and then all of the 246 that will be open on election day. You'll see those locations. You'll see the wait.
All right, so he kind of goes on and on. Now, I watched most of this. I missed a little bit of it, but I don't think there was a single question about Adrian Fontes and that shenanigan, the situation we just talked about earlier.
To our candidates and our leaders of the political parties, you know, no election is perfect. There's never been a perfect election.
Yeah, you can
and there
say
will
that
be
again.
things that might happen that we do not expect. But the problem has
Like a water
been
main
people
break
have
in Fulton
taken
County.
candidates and leaders of other political leaders have taken small incidents and weaponized them. And in particular, with weaponizing them, they have sometimes taken images of
Weaponizing what? The fact that the Secretary of State admitted in open court that he doesn't have the IDs of 200,000 people in our election? That's weaponization of just commenting on the catastrophic failures of Arizona. Okay.
our elections workers and put those out there on the internet. It's unacceptable. It's despicable. And unfortunately, we had someone who's kind of a national social media figure just did that in the last week.
What's up, James?
Got into one of our training events, had a secret camera in there, and then put out there photos of our elections workers. That's got to stop.
Now, I have not seen that or see what that is, but there is a precarious, there's a line there, right, to straddle. Because certainly you don't want to be including people or being overbroad in your investigation, right? And capture people who aren't doing anything wrong and mislabel people who are doing bad things. And I'm not saying James O'Keefe did that or anything. I've not seen it. But by contrast, you also want to expose corruption and bad actors and people who are being told bad things and the inner operations of that. Like, that's actual journalism, right? That's real journalism. You want to see what's going on. Undercover government videos are nothing new. We've seen this before. There's always exposing videos, exposing corruption. So this isn't any different. And to have people come out and say, well, and I cherish our election workers and I love the people who are there making sure that things are done appropriately, as long as they're acting with honesty and integrity, as long as they're not acting like little Jocelyn Bensons who are rigging elections, in my opinion, which is exactly what she's doing. So we got to be very careful on that. So on the one hand, right, I don't want to go out there and smear somebody who's just there counting ballots, nice person doing their job. I'm not upset about that at all. But if somebody's acting corruptly, we have to expose that corruption. And so we're always going to be straddling that line. And anybody who comes out and then uses somebody as like a blanket force field, you can't talk about our election workers. And so, well, what if they're corrupt? What if they're giving corrupt instructions? We should be able to talk about that, and we will.
These are people, again, these are not people who've run for office like me and my colleagues. These are people who are just trying to do their part to make sure our democracy functions. This type of thing has to stop, and it needs to be more than just me and my colleagues speaking out against it. We need other elected leaders across Arizona, really across the country, speaking out against it. Election workers are off limits. They should be off limits. They should not be threatened. They should not have their names.
Okay, so that is a whole separate issue, okay? Threatening somebody is already illegal, and I completely agree. You cannot threaten somebody. It's already illegal. Threatening, harassing, any of that stuff. And calling people out by names also has legal consequences, as we saw with Rudy Giuliani and his lawsuits with other election workers. So there are consequences to that, right? And there are remedies against people who make claims that are not true, that are available. So it's a precarious position to be in. But my default is I want to believe that our people who are there are good, honorable people doing good work with integrity by default. Now, if evidence or a report discovers that is not true, then that is news. That is newsworthy. That is blowing the whistle on government corruption. And then at that point, it does become newsworthy, and we do need to know about it.
Just put out there, and I have full confidence we're not going to see that from this point on. And again, we're going to focus on this election and the count of the votes.
All right. So that's Bill Onesie Twosie Gates out there. Yeah, onesie twosie, a couple of problems, just dotting some I's, crossing some T's and things. And so we saw a lot of them back during 2022, and we'll see more of them. But that's what's happening in Arizona. That's their final update for the week. They'll have one more update next week on Monday, the day before the election. But meanwhile, here is what another Secretary of State is doing out and about. She is named Jocelyn Benson, and she's out in Michigan, and she's hanging out with Hillary Clinton, and they're doing this really painful little thing together. where the Secretary of State, who you would hope would be more neutral and impartial since they're the referee and the scoreboard keeper of the state's elections, you'd think they'd be less partisan, but they can't help themselves. She thinks she's a Democrat Wonder Woman, a rising star, and maybe she will be. Probably get a job on MSNBC one day. But here she is with Hillary.
Hi guys, two secretaries here. I'm Jocelyn Benson.
I'm Hillary Clinton.
And we're here to remind you that early voting is happening now in Michigan. And did you know 2 million people have already voted?
That is great.
Yes.
Wow, hooray for Michigan. You all are absolutely setting the standard.
Yes, we're very excited. It's our first year of early voting. So if you haven't yet voted, get out and vote. Early voting closes at 8 p.m. on November 3rd. And overall, you have to vote by 8 p.m. on November 5th, Election Day, in order for your vote to count.
Terrific. And you know, I want one of those classic stickers that you all pass out in Michigan. I won't put it on until after I vote, but I want one too.
There you go. We got the Ope I voted, which is very Michigan.
That's very
thing.
Michigan.
But of
Is she
course,
voting in
the
Michigan?
famous
Does Hillary live in Michigan?
I think I have to have one of
There
those.
you go. All right. For you, Secretary
Thank
Clinton,
you.
the famous I voted werewolf sticker.
You got it.
Get out and vote, and you can get one too. Michigan.gov/vote for all your voting needs. Hi.
I'm sorry I played that for us. I don't even know what the hell they're doing. So Hillary has said that Trump is like Hitler. Jocelyn says the same thing. She's running the elections there, and they're now doing videos together to, I guess, get people out to vote to stop Trump. That's Jocelyn Benson. So just amazing. 2 peas in a pod, hanging out, doing everything they can to stop Trump. And they call themselves Team Democracy. She was part of the cabal that was doing everything humanly possible to keep Trump out of power, and she's still working hard to do it. But we'll keep our eye on them. Thanks for joining us as we do. Thanks for subscribing, and we'll see you back here on the next one. All right, my friends. What a beautiful stream it has been. Thanks for joining us on the day. If you're just joining us, here's a quick recap of what we talked about. The Supreme Court is now having to decide on an emergency stay application submitted by 25, 6, 7 states, including Virginia, to try to get people who should not be on the voting rolls off the voting rolls. We'll see what the Supreme Court does about that and get some updates back here. We also went over to Pennsylvania and explained how this law is working, on how they are actually saying you cannot reject something if the 4 of the social or the DL don't match. Cannot reject them. Must accept the ballots that come in from unidentified overseas voters in what might be one of the most insane things happening this election cycle. And then in Arizona, 200,000 plus voters that we have no ID for are currently on the rolls. And our Secretary of State, Adrian Fontes, says he's pretty sure we don't have them. But don't worry, it's only maybe 200,000-ish. 200,000-ish, not a big deal. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you. Let's see what you say about this. It's a beautiful Tuesday and an amazing Taco Tuesday. And did you know about this fun fact? I saw this was submitted here today from our amazing John McGarvey in the House. Here's what John McGarvey says. Think about this. Are you ready to have your mind just explode? Watch this. Taco cat backwards is Taco cat. I know. It's Taco Tuesday, baby. Let's see who's here. Sergeant GPS is in the house. What's up, Sergeant? Great to see you. Says breaking news, JD Vance is going to sit down with Joe Rogan tomorrow. And I did see that, and I'm excited about that. I think Trump's sit down was a major hit. We also talked about Joe posted that Kamala has not declined, but wanted Joe to fly out to her and then only wanted to do 1 hour on the show, which is obviously ridiculous, clearly. We got John McGarvey. What's going on? John McGarvey says, hey, hit the like button and get your shirts, baby. Already sold out of the whites in medium. Yes, grab your shirts, my friends. Our friends at the 2A Republic, they're shipping out shirts. I think tomorrow will be the last day. If you want to get a Trump shirt or a Second Amendment shirt, last day to get them before the election is going to be tomorrow, I think Wednesday. So they'll ship them out. Here is a Second Amendment version. They're great shirts, man. I've been wearing my Trump one. I wore it yesterday. You probably saw it. It's time to give it a wash, you know. But certainly grab your shirts. Thanks, John. John's been a member for 27 months. And by the way, all the Trump shirts that we send your way, any profits from the Trump shirts are going back into a pack. So what's up? You should be getting them pretty soon here. Yeah. Hey, Trump's coming out on stage now. I know Kamala's doing her little speech too right now. Hey, thank you, John. Says hit the like button. Get your shirts, baby. Already sold out of the whites and medium. Awesome. Yeah, look up 2A Republic if you're on the tubes as well. You want to check that out. 2A Republic. Very cool. Thank you, John. Thanks for the plug, John. And thanks for the fun meme this morning or this 5 minutes ago. Hey, Ollie, gifted 1 membo. Thank you, Ollie. Johnny will do it. Got gifted a membo courtesy of Ollie. Hey, Donna Newland. Membo for 19 months. Thank you, Donna. Thanks for hanging with us. Says best place to be. Anyone seen Dolphin Fan lately? Hello, Dolphin Fan is the man in the house. Where are you? We miss you. He's probably, I don't know, are the Dolphins in the Super Bowl or something? Hey, it's the Munkets is here. What's up, Tony? Hey, bringing in membos. Jams Varno, welcome. Oran Sowell, what's up, Paul D? Unca Danny in the house. And Brad W, gifted membos, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Hey, it's the Munkets. What's up? BH Williams says, reminder to everyone, have some extra food, some water, and fuel on hand in case of violence after the election results. You have less than a week to get some basics. Yeah, and hopefully you're set and ready to go. We've been talking about that for quite some time on our locals community and had a lot of conversation about that, I don't know, 6 months ago. Hey, more here. What's up, more here? Gifted 5 membos, bringing in 5 more here. Australian Nicole, welcome. Melissa Asiero Durr. We got Kim Stone, Derek DeVries. Algorithm is in the house. Algorithm is in the house. Welcome, welcome, courtesy of our friend, more here. Tony Hay Munkets. Bringing in 5 more. What's up, Ernie C? Patios is here. Chris D. H&H Racing Bad Back and Knees Club. Oh, man. H&H Racing Bad Back and Knees Club. Oh, man. Yeah. I just got a new foam roller for my lower back. It's been excellent, I got to tell you. And it's one of the vibrating foam rollers. It's very nice. Yeah, just turn that puppy on. It's great. Hey, what's up? Tobessa gifted a membo as well. Thank you, Tony Hay. Hey, Kaiser of Third Age, welcome back. Says, sup, Rob? Long time no see. Got busy, but I'm back, baby. Glad you're back. It's a good time to be back. It's hot right now, in case you haven't noticed. Membo for 16 months. I used to say that would be 2 babies, but now I'm learning that my multiples of 9. Hey, what's going on, Jay Dizzle? Hold up. Are those states for or against illegals voting? For. Well, Virginia is against. Yeah, Virginia is against. Arizona is for. Pennsylvania is for. So, but Virginia got overruled. So Virginia is also now for. But the state actually was against. Here's one. The reason I'm laughing is because occasionally Donut Mind Me, who is one of our amazing mods in the chat, who we just absolutely love, sometimes he'll put in a GIF. He'll put in an image or a GIF before he's clipping for us right now today. So he clips this, and right before this, there'll be an image. Sometimes I will put them up on the screen. Sometimes I will not. Just kind of depending on what it is and if I understand what's happening or not. This one came in for more here today. And here is this, it says, it's just this kid here who just says more, right? So anyways, that's a fun one. Hey, what's up? More here. Bringing in John Limon. We got David McGoat. We got David Studel. We got Faustino Roca and David Kreitzer, gifted membos, courtesy of More Here. More Here. Cat B Dog. What's up, Cat B Dog? Welcome as a supporter. Grab the members only stream this morning. It was a good one. We went about 90 minutes this morning. Sheila the Pooh, a million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. See, like that. See, like that's like what Donut does for us. See, like, but then other times we get like a kid buried in sand who's like, I need more of this, whatever, you know, because he's digging it. Hey, Sheila. 5 membos, courtesy of Sheila. Jennifer's here. Misfit News. We got Mike S., Supa Spy Girl in the house, and Alicia G. Gifted membos. Thank you, Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Hey, Michelle Perkins, 7 months as a membo, almost a full baby, says helo drills, helicopter drills last night at the Capitol building. I did see some images of that. Yeah, apparently they were doing some training, is what I saw. Haven't confirmed it, but I did see some interesting videos. Sheila Pooh says like, share, and if you can, subscribe to our channel. We'd love it if you did that. Thanks for doing it. And really, thanks for inviting someone over here. Invite them to come join us live. Tell them they can join you in the chat to dunk on liberals, you know, the fun stuff. Hey, what's up? Jay Dizzle says, I need to know if I need to start yelling at Arkansas lawmakers. Probably not in Arkansas, but yeah, and there was just that Fifth Circuit ruling that just came out. So I think you're probably good in Arkansas so far. Hey, Tony Hey Munkett says, I voted today. Can you guess who I voted for? I think you have 100% chance of correctly guessing. Let's see. Kanye says, says nope. Nope. Kanye. Wow. Amazing. That's an interesting vote. RFK Jr., Jill Stein, Trump all the way, baby, says Jennifer. I think we'll go with Trump on that one. Good to see you, Tony. Hey, F. Joe Biden says, why do non-citizens have constitutional rights? The Constitution is for we, the legal people, citizens. Yes, no, am I wrong? Well, there are certain instances where it seems like they get even more rights. You know, they get free assistance and hotels and things like that, whereas you do not. We got Sheila Pooh says, no country in the world allows non-citizens to participate in their elections, except ours, evidently. The judges are like, well, you know, it's too close to the election to kick them off. They're not supposed to be on there in the first place. Yeah, but it's still too close to kick them off. Okay, thanks. Sheila Pooh, bringing in 5 membos. Harbinger of the unconventional. We got Big One is here. Kay Stanford. We got Knee Pie Isme. We got Fire Captain 202 gifted a membo as well, courtesy of Sheila Pooh. A million hugs to you. Thank you, Sheila. Hey, it's the Munkets is bringing in 5 more membos. We got Whistle Stop Cafe, Rachel Chrysler, Aaron Rodriguez, EM, and Charla She Biro in the house, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets. Thank you, Tony. We got F. Joe Biden says, can't they argue separation of powers on this issue between state and federal? Well, yeah, I mean, that's kind of what they're talking about. I'd say some of the Purcell principle is on that thesis. We don't want the feds interfering with the states at the last minute, but they're doing that anyway. So that argument is kind of in there, but they just sidestepped around that argument and they said, well, we're not even talking about state law, so we're not impinging on state sovereignty. We're just impinging on federal sovereignty or federal law. It's not, you know, you're not sovereign from the feds. Mayor Wolf, what's up, Mayor Wolf? That's a spicy one. Mayor Wolf gifted 1 membos. John Soon is here. 24/7 live AZ Skies shouting him out. John Soon gifted a membo courtesy of Mayor Wolf, looking like that. Ray K says, if Kamala is declared the winner, I hope this time it is not accepted by the American citizens. Praying for you guys from Australia. Well, we'll see how it happens. I think they're going to have a very hard time saying that she's a plausible candidate that's going to win this cycle. A lot of people just are not going to buy it. Hey, James Dean's body part is here. That's an interesting one. Hey, what's up, Eleanor? Eleanor Schoonover. What's up, Eleanor? Thanks for this. Says, I'm so glad Virginia is engaged in an attempt to remove illegals. Thank you so much for following and analyzing the shenanigans of leftists. Several friends are blind to followers of Marx, Stalin, Mao, and other minor offenders. I think that's true, and I think maybe other friends are even fans of them in some way, shape, or form. And they may not even know that they're fans of them. You know, they might be fans in other ideologies or other aspects of a communist ideology without actually attributing it to them, knowing that they're in alignment with an ideology that's resulted in hundreds of millions of dead and endless pain and suffering courtesy of those monsters. And they're just looking around, watching our government do it in a much different way and okay with it. I'm glad that your friends, hopefully, are absorbing some brilliance through osmosis in their friendship with you, Eleanor. Thanks for being here, and thanks for the nice dono. Sheila Poo says, the only thing it takes for evil to succeed is for good men to do nothing, unless you're up against the deranged DNC. Yeah, then they'll just imprison you and come after your law license and your family. Knox says, happy Tuesday, all. So my auto spell on texting is now autofilling dictator for dictation. Apparently, AI feels we need to be textating dictator when chatting. That's pretty funny. Well, we do have a lot of dictatorship conversations happening around us. It's probably listening. It's like, oh gosh. Kamala Harris is talking about price gouging now. We know what that means. Dictatorship coming. So it's just interpreting what it's hearing around you. Good to see you, Knox. Happy Tuesday. F. Joe Biden says, okay, so basically if 1 billion votes come in, they will all be counted even though there is only about 350 million people in this country. Yeah, I mean, in Michigan in particular, we made a video about that showing how Jocelyn Benson is trying to be clever in her own words. But yeah, there's a bunch of people, sounds like more people on the list than there are registered to vote. Shane Souza says, like, share, and subscribe, my friends. Hit the notification bell and select all so you never miss a thing. Thank you, Shane. Sheila Poo says, every state needs to go back to pre-COVID rules and pass laws to protect our elections. That would be a good idea, yeah. A lot of pre-COVID changes. A lot of things going back to pre-COVID would be good. Thank you, Sheila, for that one. Hey, Knox says, Tucker, RFK Jr., and Donald Trump together in Glendale on Halloween. Is this the coolest Halloween party around or what? And Knox, pretty sure your boy's going to be there. That's the plan. Plan is your boy's going to be there. So that is coming soon on Thursday. So we'll see. We'll see what's coming up. I'm waiting for a couple things to align. We'll see if that happens or not. Thank you, Knox. Yeah, it's going to be amazing if I can get over there. Hey, this old guy says, of course, none of Arizona's numbers can be depended on. They are all ish. They're all ish, apparently. A lot of ish happening here. Couple of onesies and twosies, not the big deal. Hey, Lady Ice on our locals was over at the MSG rally in Madison Square Garden. Man, that is a heck of a badge. That is a cool badge. That is a memento to cherish. You were there for one historic night. That is amazing. Forgot to share this, my official credentials. How cool is that? And this is a great clip of Kamala, you're fired. And so we've been sharing those. She's been sharing those over on locals. We got Tom Walker, Membo for 8 months. Thank you, Tom Walker. 1 month to a baby says paper ballots, photo ID, equals limited fraud. Exactly right. Yeah, you have 1 day. It's contemporaneous. You don't have time to increase fraud. You don't have a bunch of mailed stuff. There's a reason it's in person. It's for security. What's up, Jennifer? Says you are legally allowed to watch the poll places on election day. Just don't interrupt people voting there, says Jennifer. Allowed to watch, just don't interrupt. And also double check the camera rules, right? There are camera rules. So watch means with your eyeballs, not with your camera. Sheila Poo says lines were long because the machines weren't working, says Sheila Poo. And, well, that's your fault. Maybe everybody should just be more patient, okay? So what if our machines don't work? Okay, call your mother while you're standing in line and stop whining about it. Real with Robo says, I'm so sick of the lies and nearly a baby here. You're right about that, Real. 1 month. About to pop. Says, yeah, there's a lot. And they're getting pretty egregious in these final hours. Hey, Jennifer, what's up? Says, please join Off-Label Podcast after Rob's show. Jennifer, are you going to be on? Check it out, my friends. Off-Label Podcast to continue the fun. Lady I says, here's a link to the album in the Google Photos. It's set to anyone with a link can access. So hopefully it works. And so there's a whole ton of videos. Okay, so Lady Ice was there inside Madison Square Garden and took a ton of videos. And so they looked amazing. Hey, what's up? Tanya Karras. Hey, Tanya! Tanya is our Taco Tuesday protege, connoisseur. So she says, so sorry. Spent the day with the twins. Man, that's a good place to be, Tanya. Happy Taco Tuesday. Happy Taco Tuesday. Tanya always comes in. We're always having something. Even on Taco Tuesdays, like sometimes we're having like short ribs, you know, with mashed potatoes and asparagus on Taco Tuesday, because you could, you know, you can always finagle something. Like on that one, you'd probably put the asparagus. That's not a really good example, but anyways, enjoy whatever it is you're enjoying and indulging. And thank you, Tanya, for the lovely dono, and shout out to the twins. Sheila Pooh, 1,000,000 hugs to you. 5 more membos. Thank you, Sheila. David Moffat is here. Ivan Blutarski, what's up? Bimmer Vibes, Pistol Pete, and Gigaping in the house. Gigaping in the house. Sheila Pooh, thank you for that, Sheila. 5 new membos coming in the house. It's the king of Biltong. Oh, it's hilarious. Hilarious. Okay, so on the after party yesterday on Locals, we were talking with Neuro D, as you see here, Neuro D1. We were talking about protein and protein ingestion mechanisms and what is a good way to ingest a lot of protein. I don't know how it came up, but it came up. And he asked about biltong, and I said, I've heard of it, but I don't think I've ever actually tried it. He said, you must try it. He said, I'll get you connected with the king of biltong. There's a king of biltong? Must be good. So here he is. You say his name 3 times and he's here. King of biltong is here. Said, I should send you some biltong. If you're interested, please send me your details. I'll send you a sample. Eat at antonsusa.com. Have a great evening, all. There you go, my friends. So get your biltong. And it's something that you eat. It's like a beef jerky type of a thing. But apparently it like lasts forever. It's got good protein in there. So it sounds great. Thank you, King of Biltong. I will send you an email. Thanks for the nice message, and thanks for coming on by. Hey, Kat Saunders is here. Kat Saunders, see? That's like a cat who is saundering, right? Get it? Kat Saunders, what's up? Gifted 1 membo. Than Chow gifted a membo courtesy of Kat Saunders. Thank you, Kat Saunders. NY Renal over on Local says, instead of Maricopa County publishing the names of the no ID voters, how about keeping the list under seal? If any of the list turn out to be illegal voters, they will be prosecuted. No, they won't. But I get your point. Just the publicity that it will be followed through with will, by attrition, make many of the illegals stop voting. So just by shining a spotlight on that, by basically just showing you can be seen now, they will not emerge. Hey, Eskil, 9 months as a membo. That is a full baby. Says, I've been enjoying watching your content for a while. Thank you, Eskil. Thanks for being here, my friend. Thanks for being a membo for 9 full months. It's a long time. It's a full baby. I appreciate you being here. Thank you, Eskil, for that. And Stan says, what would happen if Virginia said, the heck with it, and ignored the court? You mean in like just didn't accept the votes? Yeah, like just kept them off the list. I mean, it depends how far you want to take it, but eventually somebody somewhere could probably hold some official in contempt of an order somewhere and then put them in prison unless they do something. So whatever, however that escalates, wherever that goes, somebody being held in contempt for not following a court order somewhere, going to jail. Sheila Pooh says, pray for our country and that turnout of patriots is too big to rig. Yes, my friends, 100% this. And I'm optimistic about that, not overly optimistic, because as we're here every day seeing, there are shenanigans afoot and a lot of very serious ones. UOCAVA, overseas ballots, no IDs matching, hundreds of thousands of people who are in giant buckets of unknown voters. It's lunacy. But that being said, we have our eyes and our wits about us this election. We're keeping our eyes on what they're doing, and we now know what they're doing. And so we're going to vote. We're going to vote harder than ever, and we're going to win this thing, baby. Hey, David Moffat says, I talk about rigging my vote, and Google recommends joining the DNC. LOL. So it's listening to you, and it just comes up with a suggestion. Hi, would you like to join the Democratic Party? Like I was just talking about stealing an election. We know. You're a great fit. It's like one of those commercials. Do you wake up wanting to steal the democracy of your country? Are you somebody who hates free speech and loves war? Well, do I have a message for you? MJ Party. What's up, MJ Powell? MJ Party for MJ Powell. Super Straight is here. We got Doc Brining, Crystal Helton, Brendan is here, and Sandy Fisher gifted members courtesy of MJ Powell in the house. And NY on Locals says, instead of Maricopa County publishing the names of the no ID voters, how about keeping the list under seal? Yes, and NY, we got that one. Thank you for that, NY. And a great comment there. All right, so my friends, such nice comments. Thank you for the lovely donos and for supporting our work here. We're going to see what's happening over on X. Kamala Harris is speaking right now. Oh, gosh. All right, we'll listen to 1 second of this and see what's happening, because she's live right now on the Ellipse. This is like her big speech.
But united in our pursuit of freedom, our belief in fairness and decency, and our faith in a better future. America, I know the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us.
Are those sirens?
And that's
There's
why
sirens
I
in
am
the background.
this race, to fight for the people.
Because her city's probably burning down to the ground. DC's, just totally terrible. All right, so what's up? That's Kamala speaking. We've got Fred Pedamonte on X says, Rob, what is the DOJ, part of the executive branch, doing suing a state? Well, they're trying to rig an election, obviously. Darby says, if our government put as much effort into actually doing their job as they do trying to cheat, the country would be euphoric, be a much better position than it currently is now. And so what's up to our friends on X? Good to see everybody over on X. Those were some comments, not on the live feed, but let's see, where is that live feed? We got Fred is over there. Here was some other items. Well, here's the show. All right. Well, what's up to our friends on X? I don't know where the feed is. I don't know where our show is. I can't find it. So we love you. Thanks for following us on X. But my friends, that is where we are going to leave it on the day. And just to make sure we don't end on a Kamala sour note, let's see what's happening over here. From El Presidente Trump.
I don't mind hearing you twice. That's how good you are, Marco. But at a minimum, Marco, when it's your time, I'm going to bring you up and shake your hand, because he has been a great senator and he's a great guy. True. It's true. He's a great guy. Smart guy. He's a smart guy. Sometimes he's a little too smart. He's a good guy. He's a good man.
Marco.
Thank you, Marco. Now, Kamala wants to raise the typical family's taxes, by the way. Every time she does a commercial, she lies. She's a real liar. She's worse than Crooked Hillary. Crooked Hillary was a liar. Remember? Irredeemable. What was the word before irredeemable? Right? I thought irredeemable was going to be the bad word, right? Little did I know. But Crooked Hillary used to lie a lot, but she's nothing compared to Kamala.
Yeah, Kamala's terrible.
And the difference is Crooked Hillary's much smarter, but she suffers from a major case of Trump derangement syndrome.
Hey, we got some new emojis in the YouTube chat. If you remember, we got some new emojis. Those came over courtesy of Just Rhonda. Thank you, Just Rhonda, for sending those in. We got some fun new emojis in there. Got those added. Just Rhonda, you rock. Thanks for doing that. And Lady Ice says you can only be a poll watcher if you register with your local board of elections. You have to specify where, and you get a specific authorization form so you can stay, and usually no photos or anything that could be considered electioneering material within 100 feet of the polling area. No t-shirts, buttons, etc. And Lady Ice has been there, boots on the ground in New York. So good stuff. Thank you, Lady Ice, for that.
Don't leave this stuff. But if you wanted to leave your estate to your beautiful kids, which most families, does anybody in here not love their child or their children? I've only had one hand raised.
Anyone?
About 20 times I asked that.
One hand was raised?
And people beat that person up. They actually went after him. That guy was in bad shape. And because I actually think he meant it. No, but you know what? They want to get rid of the estate tax. So you have no estate tax to pay if you leave your farm to your kids, if you leave your business to your kids. You have no estate tax to pay. She wants to get rid of that. She doesn't like that. And you know what's happening, especially with the farmers, because they leave their beautiful farm and it's it's got asset value, but it's a hard kind of a business, but a beautiful business. And they'd leave, think of it, they'd leave their farm, and then the kids have to go out and they had to borrow money because you had like a 50% tax. So they appraise it, you have to go out, borrow money. And they end up always like 80%, 82% of the time or something, they end up losing the farm. It turns out to be a nightmare.
Horrific.
I got rid of the estate tax or the death tax, so you don't have that anymore. And she wants to get rid of that. She's a tough guy. She's a tough one. She destroyed the city of San Francisco, it's one of the greatest cities of the world.
True.
She destroyed it,
True.
and she worked with Gavin Newsom, one of the worst governors in history,
Ruin the whole state.
to destroy California. And we're not going to let her destroy the United States of America. We're not going to let her.
That's right, baby. Not going to happen. And so President Trump is out there on the campaign trail. Hopefully you're tuning in and watching the rally. But my friends, we'll leave it there on the day. Thank you so much for joining us. We covered some good ground today. We are going to come back tomorrow and we're going to get into it again. We got some amazing mods in the house. What's up, K-Bean? Thank you, Donut. Thank you, John McGarvey, for clipping for us on the day. Goofy for Jesus says, do we see this one? Says, what are the chances that illegals are being threatened to vote? Vote Kamala or be deported or maybe something even worse. Here was that comment from Goofy for Jesus. They're being threatened or maybe even worse. Yeah, I wouldn't doubt it for a second. And there's almost an implied threat. I mean, Mika Brzezinski is threatening women, essentially, saying you're going to die unless you vote for Kamala Harris. We're going to die. We're going to die. They're killing women out there. Like Trump is killing women. And you better vote for Kamala or else you're going to die, is essentially what they're saying. Boopsy says, I can't believe someone or something wants me to stop wasting my time and energy trying to listen to Rumble or locals. So much freezing, so many interruptions happening. I'm sorry to hear about that, Boopsy. That is definitely frustrating. Sorry that it's not working for you, but we're glad that you're here. Thanks for persevering through and making your way here and joining us on the day. But my friends, okay, thanks for joining in and for all of the amazing comments. Really appreciate you being here and supporting our work that we're doing. We're going to keep this train on the tracks, baby, through the election. And so I hope you join us as we do. We'll pause here for the evening. Head on over to Locals for our members only after party. Grab a shirt from 2A Republic. Get those orders in because my friends Michael and his lovely wife are sending these out in batches. And so they're going to get those out immediately and coming your way. So get those in before the election so you have them for the election so we can wear our swag together. And my friends, that's going to be it for us on the day. So again, thanks to the mods. My friends, thanks for the lovely donos. Thanks for joining us. We'll pause here for the evening and we'll go over to Locals for our after party. But tomorrow, we will be back to get into it again. And in order to do that, we're going to need to see you right back here so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful night, my friends. Sleep very well. I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Bye-bye.